Izzy at Minerva. Today we are looking at how to draft a really cute little cropped cardigan. You can see the picture next to me here of what we're aiming for. It's going to have little sort of puff sleeves, have nice wide sleeves, come into a nice little cinch at the cuff, and then we're going to create a nice broad neckband to accommodate some nice chunky buttons, and it's going to be really cute. It's going to kind of come down just below the waist, so it's going to fit us in quite sort of a fitted way across the body, but have these nice big sleeves. So in order to follow along today, you're going to need your standard pattern drafting tools, and those are listed right next to me here. And you'll see that we've got our jersey block listed there. If you've not got your own jersey block that you've drafted out, you can refer back to a previous video that I've filmed, which shows you how to create your own bespoke jersey block for your top based on your own body dimensions. The one I'm going to be using today is actually mine, so don't worry if yours doesn't look exactly like that proportionally, and that's just simply because everybody has a different body shape. So let's get straight on into drafting this pattern. So this pattern obviously has a big opening at the front. It's a cardigan, so it's got buttons at the front. So in terms of stretch capacity, the fabric that you choose for this particular garment doesn't have to be necessarily hugely stretchy. It's not a massively fitted garment. It is going to kind of fit across our torso, but because we don't have to like pull it on over our head, we can just button it up. And because the sleeves are quite nice and baggy as well, it means that you can choose a fabric with a little bit less give in it. So I've chosen a beautiful fabric from our Minerva core range, which has some lovely texture on it. So we'll be sewing that up later on in the video. As we film this today, I'm wearing the jumpsuit, which is designed by Paper Theory Patterns. This is using a beautiful linen fabric, and we've got lots of that on our website. I really think it works nicely in that, and it's perfect for the summer. Okay, so we've got the front and the back pattern pieces here. Now this block, the front and the back are exactly the same. So this side here, this one's going to be my front, so it's not my centre back. This one is going to be my back, so we've got the higher neckline there, so that's the centre back, and that is not the front neck. We don't need to refer to that line or to this line because that is the top of our neck. Other than that, everything else is exactly the same. Now I don't want a super fitted look for this, for the sleeve. I want to have a little bit of space. I don't want it to be sitting like really tight underneath my armpits. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extend the arm side of the block just to give me a little bit more wiggle room. I'm going to drop it a little bit and also widen it a little bit. What I do to the front, I'm also going to do to the back, because obviously they're mirror images of each other. Initially, I want to just draw in where I want the style of my cardigan to finish. So I'm just going to drop it 5 centimeters below my waist, and that's across both the front and the back, because obviously we want them to match up. Brilliant, let's cut that out now. Lovely. Okay, so now let's just send out this underarm armscye up by 1 centimetre and then drop it down by 1 centimetre. And that point there then becomes my new armscye line. So just using the curve on the pattern drafting ruler, I'm just going to recreate that bottom curve of the armscye. Now, a lot of the design decisions that we're making here today are intuitive. There's no like rule of thumb of how much you want to increase your ease by on your garment, because actually it's personal preference, isn't it? So a lot of it is about just playing around and working out what you think looks good for you and what you feel comfortable in as well. So although I'm going to show you what I like and the method that I'm going to use, you can always add in extra ease if you'd like to, or reduce the ease if you like a closer fit. Completely up to you, and that's part of the fun of pattern drafting. Okay, I want to run a line that's parallel to my side seam because I actually want this to be quite a fitted garment. So I'm just going to offset a line that is about 1.2 centimeters. I'm joining it from this point here down to the waist. Now, whatever we do to the front, we also need to do to the back. Now at this point at the waist, I'm actually just going to square it down because I don't want there to be any further sort of shaping of the waistband. That's effectively going to become my waistband down there. So I'm going to draw a line across my waistline here just to denote that that is going to become my waistband. Okay, so on my front here, I'm going to want to put 3 little buttons, something like that. They're going to go straight down the centre front, but in order for them to go on the centre front, I'm going to need to add a little bit of extra, aren't I, to the other side of the centre front, because to open it up, these buttons need to be on the centre front. So we're going to add a little piece of paper down the centre front. So if my buttons are in this sort of area, and I know that my buttons are, let's see, just over 2 centimetres wide, and I want space for my buttonhole, I think what I'm going to do is actually create a band which is 5 centimetres wide. That's going to be quite chunky, but I think that's going to suit the scale of the buttons and also the scale of the fabric that I'm going to be using. So I'm just going to mark a point 2.5 centimetres to either side of the centre front line, and I'm just going to draw in that little button stand. Okay, so I'm going to put one button there, another one around there, and another one around there. It kind of feels like the neckline sort of wants to come in like this, doesn't it, in a nice little V shape down here. So I'm just going to drop it a few centimetres below the arm side, really keeping an eye on sort of where it's going to sit on the centre front, because that's going to be where the opening is. So I do want quite a close fit up around the top. I want that to be quite nice and snug. And I'm just keeping an eye of where the curve sort of hits there. So let's see. I think that looks quite nice. So this now becomes my style line. Now that I've drawn the style line of the V of the neckline of this little cardigan, I need to continue to run that neckband all the way around and take that off the block. So I'm just going to offset a point that is 5 centimetres offset from around the perimeter of this neckline, because that's the same width as this bit down here. So that's the neckband. Now the neckband is going to be separate to the main body of the cardigan, so let's cut that off now. Great, let's draw in our neckband at the back as well now. And then let's cut that out. Okay. What we want to do with the neckband is we don't just want to create these 2 separate pieces, because our fabric is slightly stretchy. So what we're effectively going to do is to create a straight neckband, which can then curve around the body of the cardigan. At this point here, where the junction is here, what we want to do is to have there should be like no stretch of the neckband with the cardigan at this point, because we don't want it kind of pulling up at the waistband. However, from this point around the front of the neck and around the back of the neck, we do want the neckband to be a little bit shorter at this point, because we want the neckband to make sure that it sits flat against our skin. So what we're going to do is we're going to draft this with 0 stretch up to this point here, at that point. And then from here onwards, we are going to draft the neckband piece that we're going to do at 90% of the actual length. And this bit here is also going to be at 90% of the length. So let's work out the length of those neckbands. Grab a tape measure and just walk out the distance in a curve of that neckband. And the same for the back. Let's grab our calculator and work out what 90% of 30.5 is. So 30.5 times 0.9 gives us 27.5. Let's do the same for the back. So 14 times 0.9 gives us 12.6. Okay, so I'm just going to measure the length from here down to here to start off with, and that's 15. So what I'm wanting to draft is basically a neckband, which is a nice long rectangle like this. This bit down here, the first bit, is going to relate to here. So I'm just going to measure the length of that. What does that need to be? 15 centimetres. And then from here up to here, I want the length of my rectangle to be 27.5 centimetres. And then at the top for my back neckband, I want it to be 12.6. Okay, so that's kind of what we're aiming for. That gives us the right shape of neckband. So in total, let's find out the length. So it's 15 plus 27.5. For you, it will obviously be something different. Plus 12.6, so 55.1 centimetres long. And the width of it, we want it just to be double the width of whatever this is, because we want it to fold it back on itself. So we drafted this at 5 centimetres, so I know that I want it to be 10 centimetres wide. So let's draw a rectangle that represents that shape that we want. Once you've drawn that shape, we then want to add little notches to indicate where this notch is here, and where it's going to join in with that point, and also where it is up here at the shoulder seam. So for me, my first one is going to be at 15 centimetres along. That's my first notch. And then the next one is going to be 27.5, which is there. And that leaves me with 12.6 to go around the back of the neck down there. Lovely, so we've done our neckband now, so we can just get rid of these pieces. We don't need them anymore. So the only thing left to do on these pattern pieces is going to be just to cut the waistbands off. Now I'm not going to reduce the width of the waistband at all. I'm quite like it just being like straight like that. So we're just going to leave it exactly as per that shape. Okay, so for the waistband, I've just doubled the width of it so I can fold it in half when I attach it on to the front. Brilliant. Right, okay, so we've done everything we need to do for the bodice and or the neckline and the hem. What we're next going to have a little look at is the sleeve block. As we did with the front, we're just going to mark a point that is 1 centimetre away from the underarm arm side and 1 centimetre down. And then we're just very simply just going to draw in that new arm size shape. And that corresponds beautifully with what we did to the front. Next, I'm just going to mark off my 5 centimetre cuff. Okay, I wanted just to create a little bit of volume in this cardigan at the top up here, just a little bit, not a massive amount, and also down at the cuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down my pattern piece and open it out. Now that our arm side line is dropped, we just need to draw in a new little arm side line that hits the underarm like that. Measure the length of that line. For me it's 18, and then divide it by 3 so that you can then divide this line into 3 equal segments. And then just draw 2 parallel lines from the centre front down. Cut along those 2 lines. Okay, so now we've got these 3 little pieces that we've divided into 3, and what we basically want to do is just evenly distribute and add the same amount of volume into each sleeve. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure and increase it by just 2 centimetres. So use your pattern drafting ruler just to mark 2 centimetres offset from that first line there. And then bring in your second piece and just line that up nice and carefully at that 2 centimetre mark. Then just repeat the process for the final little segment. Lovely. What we're going to do now is just draw in our sleeve head and then just straighten off our sleeve cuff as well. Wonderful. Okay, so let's have a little look now at this sleeve cuff pattern piece. The length of my sleeve is 11.5. 11.5 times 0.9, I just want to reduce that width a little bit so that it's going to just cinch in a little bit, is 10.3. So I'm going to shorten my sleeve cuff down to 10.3 and just trim that off. And of course with the sleeve cuff we have doubled it so that it can fold over and have the right side both on the inside and the outside. Brilliant. We have done some really hard work there. Let's move on now and create our pattern pieces by just adding our seam allowance and our standard annotations. So we've got all of our pattern pieces here. They've all just been shifted around a little bit, and I'm just going to add my seam allowances. So I've added seam allowance around the perimeter except for on the fold because it's just going to be duplicated over. I'm going to cut 2 on the fold, and grain line just runs perpendicular to our cuff. Let's do our neckband next. So with our neckband piece, we are adding a seam allowance down to the bottom, but we are cutting it on the fold at the centre back because it's a cardigan and of course it's going to open up at the front, isn't it? So we've also added our notches here and here for our front notch and our shoulder notch, and the grain line's just going to run straight down. Let's move on to our back waistband. And for this piece, we're going to place it on the fold at the centre back, again, because it's going to be opening up at the front. And I've just added a little notch here and here to annotate where the waistband is attaching to the side seam. Moving on to the back pattern piece. So this is our cropped cardigan, it's our back. We're going to cut one on the fold, and I've accidentally added a seam allowance there, so just ignore that. We're going to cut it on the fold, and we've added a seam allowance around the perimeter. Grey line just runs parallel with our centre back. This is our cropped cardigan cuff. We've just added a seam allowance around the perimeter. I'm going to cut that on the fold, and of course cut two because we've got two sleeves. And then moving on to our front as our final piece. So on our front, I've added a seam allowance all the way around, a little notch here, and the grain line runs perpendicular to where the centre front would be effectively. Great, well done for creating your pattern pieces. Let's cut them out of fabric and then see what this looks like by sewing it up together. Okay, so the fabric that I've picked for this little cardigan is our Minerva Core range chunky cotton sweater knit fabric, and this one is in our almond colour. It's made of 80% cotton and 20% polyester. It has got quite a lot of stretch to it. Width-wise, about 60% stretch, and lengthways about 25, so it's really nice for sort of wrapping around your body. It's got a good amount of stretch. And then in addition to that, I've also got a couple of, well, just 3 little buttons to pop onto the cardigan. All right, let's get sewing. Okay, so I'm going to start just by joining my front to my back. So with right sides together, I'm just going to lay the frontal cardigan piece over the back, and I'm just going to pin and then sew the side seams and the shoulder seams up here. Okay, so just like that, we've sewn those little seams and the top one too. Okay, the next thing we need to attach on is actually our waistband. So with wrong sides together, we're just going to fold that waistband in half lengthways, just like that. And then I'm going to pop the top, the right side facing up, and we're just going to line up and pin the waistband to the top. And then just sew that in place. Okay, so that waistband is now on beautifully. The next thing that I want to look at is actually attaching this neckband. So let's go and grab the neckband pattern piece, and I've actually interfaced the bottom section, which is the section which is going to join up with this bit down here on that side, because it's going to have buttons in it and there's no stretch at that point. So at either end of this pattern piece, I've put a little bit of interfacing at both ends. Now, this is a really long piece, but what we want to do to start off with is the same as what we've done for all the other pieces. Just fold it in half and just pop a few little pins in just to keep it in place. Okay, now at the bottom down here, we actually want to fold right sides together to start off with, and just sew a seam allowance along the bottom in order to get a nice smooth finish at the bottom of our hem. And just trim off the corners and grade that seam. So you can turn those ends out so that you can create a really nice finish with a nice sharp point at the bottom. Excellent. Okay, so let's get our nice long neckline, and just very gently, we don't want to overstretch this neckline, but very gently we just want to pin the neckband to the main body of the cardigan. So just line it up really nicely and neatly down at the bottom, and because that is going to be the hemline. It's all kind of sorted now. So there's no stretch at the bottom section there, but the rest of the neckline there is a little bit of a stretch around the rest of the perimeter. So just line up the notches and then you're good to go to stretch in between. And once you've pinned the entire neckline, let's just sew it in place. We've got 2 sleeve pieces, and what we're going to do is just to pin the long side seam and then sew it in place for both of those sleeves. Great, let's go and grab our sleeves next. Now our sleeves are exactly the same on the on both sides, front and back, so it doesn't matter which side you pop which one into, as in which arm side you pop them into. But the sleeve head is much bigger than the arm side of the bodice, so we need to insert some gathering stitches around the top of the sleeve head so we can get it into the arm side. Now, where you start your gathering stitch is really a design preference. It's completely up to you. I'm going to start it here and finish it at the same point on the other side. I'm just going to pop those 2 pins there as a reference, and then on my other sleeve head I'm just going to make sure that I'm pinning it at exactly the same point as well. So we're just going to get a nice even distribution. So I'm going to run 2 lines of gathering stitches along the top of the sleeve head from pin to pin within the seam allowance. Okay, let's now sew the sleeve to the arm's eye, gathering in the sleeve head as needed. Oh, doesn't that just look so cute? I really love those little puff sleeves. Just a nice tiny little detail. It wasn't a massive pattern drafting change that we did there, was it? But it just adds that really nice little bit of sort of volume in that area. So great, let's do the same process with our cuffs. We're going to grab our cuffs and we are going to sew them first together with right sides together along the short sides, and then we're just going to fold those little cuffs in half as we did for the neckband and the waistband. So our little wrist cuff is narrower than our sleeve end here. So if you feel like you need to gather and run some gathering stitches through there, then go for it. If you feel like this is going to stretch out and you'll be able to just sort of gather it in naturally, then do that. And there we have one really cute little sleeve cuff. Brilliant, let's do the other side. So the final thing we're going to do is we're going to put the buttons and buttonholes on at the front. Now the buttons go on the left side as we wear it, and the buttonholes are going to go on the right side as we wear it. So you place your buttons wherever you would like them to be, and just sew them in place and sew some buttonholes on the right hand side. And then let's go and take a look and see what that looks like. So here we have our beautiful little cardigan in our gorgeous Minerva core fabric. Those little details just make the whole thing just look really cute and really beautiful, don't they? So yeah, absolutely gorgeous. So thanks for joining me today as we've been looking at how to create and how to design a beautiful little cardigan. You can see from this point you could take that concept and those principles that I've shown you and just create a longer cardigan, a cardigan with pockets, a more baggy one with a more fitted sleeve, one with a more exaggerated sleeve. There's loads of fun things that you could do with that, but hopefully that's a nice little starting point for you to start designing your own cardigan. Have loads of fun with it too. Don't forget to tag us if you do create anything on social media. We always love to see your creations. And of course you can create your own account on our Minerva website and post your photos and tag your fabric on our Minerva website. So please do get involved in our maker community. We love to see what you guys are making at home. So thanks for joining me today. I've been Izzy and I'll see you next time.